So I'm going to give you my view of this whole thing is I think every person has to first of all decide what level do you want to have this conversation at?
Mm-hmm.
Because as you said, there's an activist level that's very contentious, and some people love that level.
Mm-hmm.
Like some people are fighters, they love the debate, they can stand and they can proclaim, and they love that level. And there are examples in the Bible of people who are like that. Like John the Baptist was one of those guys.
Yeah.
Like he didn't take a soft approach. He wasn't, the gentle. I'm going to try to reach your heart. He was just like, this is what's true, and he didn't really concern himself with the cost. So that's one level we can have this conversation at, and everybody has to ask, am I willing to pay the price to have the conversation at that level?
Right.
Most people are going to say no,
Right.
honestly, because most people are not fighters. They're not contenders.
And let's be honest, there's a social cost for the conversation.
There is. And so if you're willing to make that cost and you can handle it at that level, I say jump in and take the stand, but don't be surprised if people push back on you.
Mm-hmm.
Because the people are not looking for answers today. They're just looking for wins.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the other level is a very personal level that you care about people and you don't want them to base their lives on things that are not true. That's a very different level of conversation. And I would say the key to that level is curiosity. That we need to be good at asking questions, not making comments.
Yeah.
Because people really are struggling with this.
Yeah.
But they're not asking all of the questions they should be asking. And there are some obvious questions we can ask that we don't have to be contentious about, we don't have to be difficult about, but they matter.
Yeah.
So the people who are really upset about what we see happening in our culture, one of the questions we should be asking is, so Reed, what is a realistic solution we can talk about?
Mm-hmm.
That if that's wrong, what should we be doing instead?
Yeah.
And I really would love to hear your input on it.
Yeah.
And if you stay curious, not like, well, you don't have an answer.
Yeah.
Now we're just back into a big fight that's not getting the average person anywhere.
Yeah.
But if we honestly ask the question, and if we honestly ask questions like, okay, so if we're not supposed to say we're male and female, what are we supposed to say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And wait for the answer. Because, again, if we really are curious about what other people think, it will frustrate us because we're going to find out people don't have a lot of answers.
Yeah.
They have a lot of emotion and they have a lot of energy. They don't have a lot of answers.
Yeah, I was talking with my kids about this today, my students, I should say, who I consider my kids. I love them dearly. But I was talking with the students about this today, about not to keep on bringing this back up, but just to kind of circle back to this as an example. I was talking to them about why the only answers we have for police brutality are deconstructionist, but we don't have any constructionist answers. Right.
Exactly.
And maybe I'm wrong about that, and I'm just not aware. But I've got to be honest. In the public conversation, I've heard zero constructive answers on how we're actually going to solve the answer or solve the problem of police brutality and systemic racism and police forces. If we're going to have that conversation, but yeah. So I think ultimately, yes, this is where obviously as a man in good conscience, I cannot and would not disagree with the ultimate answer of, one, we need to be endlessly curious and we need to have discussions. But I am concerned somewhat with the fact that the activist contingent is doing their best and a good job of it, of just saying we will not have conversations where people disagree. However, I also know at the end of the day that we need to not only be endlessly curious, but we also need to provide whatever answers we can to these issues, because I also am a little bit concerned, especially with people my age and much younger, that there is a hopelessness and a despair and a lack of optimism in this generation. And by the way, I don't know if you can speak to this, but there is that among especially transgender young girls. And transitioning is not helping that. The level of depression, suicide, anxiety, and all that stuff is in many cases only getting higher after girls transition, because they find out that it's not really the answer that they were looking for. And I think even among the LGBT community, like, we need to have open conversations about that and be okay with suggesting these statistics without thinking that we're trying to take away what your identity is or your sexuality or anything like that. We're just trying to have these honest and open conversations about these realities that deserve to have some solutions provided for them.
So I think the answer to this, Reed, is helping people discover their value. Like, I actually am shocked at how many people because I coach people on a regular basis.
Right.
One of the questions I always ask them is, hey, now that we've got to know each other a little bit, I want to ask you the question, what are you exceptionally good at in your life? And people look at me like I spoke to them in a foreign language.
Wow.
That we've not given people permission to think that way. I also think that our parenting over the last 20 years, we've been so self-focused. We forgot to tell our kids, hey, before you go very far, let me point out, do you realize you are really good at this? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we're afraid people are going to get proud, if we're afraid that they're going to get narcissistic, but the average person has no idea what they're really good at.
Well, I think, I just want to interject this real quick. I think our culture has moved away from Christianity, and I think we moved away from virtue. I asked my students the other day, too, if they looked up to anybody, and almost every one of them said no.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
And so if there's a void of I don't know what I'm good at, I'm going to look for it. And we look for it in all kinds of crazy ways and all kinds of positive ways.
You can catch brand new episodes of Indie Thinker with Reed Uberman every Monday and weekly bonus episodes to keep you thinking throughout the week. But you have to subscribe and click the bell to be notified when new episodes drop. If you enjoy this content, make sure to like this video and share it with friends.